I think I think you should start it. I think you should start every one of your podcasts with that.
It can be my little, like, everyone uses that same like acoustic guitar intro sound in every podcast. That can be, I can make my own version of that.
Like,
And it's just like me.
Wait, Casey, you mean the Egyptologist who does Peter Frampton at the start of every podcast? Yeah, I know him.
Yeah. If anyone knows who Peter Frampton is, I guess.
Nope.
Nope. He was a.
I'm not
I got to see him live about 4 years ago, and he had the audience do that sound because he was doing the acoustic version of all his hits of his various songs.
Nice. Interestingly, not the most popular live album of all time, but the concert TV was at, because it was just a bunch of dorks imitating his weird instrument. But Frampton Comes Alive, that album, is the most popular live album of all time, and it's good. It's a little dated, honestly. I like rock music from all eras, and it's definitely a product of its time. So, keep that in mind. But the last song, I forget what the last song is. It's this like super long burn where it's him just doing those.
Is it the "Do You Feel Like I Feel" one?
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think people who are not stoned would probably not appreciate that song.
Yeah, but you can remedy that too. It's now legal in like 25 states. So, have fun, guys. I don't know what state you're in, or country, but it's probably legal in your state.
Well, since it's Coptic class, I'm in a slightly confused state right now.
Okay. Anyway, so just getting started. If you're watching the video, that was a lot of just kind of rambling around, but I was talking about this research project I'm doing to try to determine the values of written Coptic vowels in the 10th century using an Arabic language text written in the Coptic script. So that's the basic gist of this project. It's something I'm working on for, I can't actually say what it's for because it's a surprise. It's for a surprise project for someone very special. And with other people. It's not just me making them a weird Coptic vowel surprise. It's like a whole bunch of academics putting something together. Okay, so we have a message in the chat. Someone is behind. As always, it's perfectly fine to be behind. It's really, it's totally up to you. If you want to like try to answer things even though you're not sure and you're willing to kind of struggle through them, that is encouraged. If you just don't feel comfortable and you'd prefer not to answer at all, of course, that's perfectly fine too. And as always, this class is meant to be structured in such a way that you can kind of drop in and out as you need to. If you get busy, you can skip the class and watch the video for that class and then come back the next week. It's meant to work that way. And whenever you show up, you're welcome to just struggle away, and we will help you get it figured out. Let's see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like I have 8 or 9 people reading. I forgot to open the thing. Unprepared for class. This, I guess I need to get this, and I need to get the other thing too. Okay, let's make it bigger. I think this is where we are.
Looks about right.
Okay. It looks like we have 15 and 20. That's 35. Shouldn't take too long to get through those. Everybody will get about 4 each or somewhere around there. So it looks like first on my list, as usual, is Michael. Michael, would you like to take those first 4?
Okay. Oh, crikey. Evolution. Okay. Away from among us. Away from on us?
Yeah. Yeah, out from on us. Good. And this would probably, if it were in a sentence, it would probably mean just from us, literally. Good.
Am I with myself or with me?
That's right.
Wel een het teuten, away from, in with, I guess, you plural. So again, away from, amongst you.
Yeah, and this evolhen is the basic form of this preposition, and it will. I just pronounced it the Bohairic way without meaning to. Evolhen is this Saidic preposition, and it means a few different things in context, but it often means something like through, or like via, or by means of, or something like that. So, but yeah, however you translate it, it's out in y'all.
And fourth, uve, oive. And somebody suggested it might be pronounced uve.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna have to look at my. Oh, against me.
Against
right,
me.
Yes. Uve. Yeah.
Yeah. So uve is against or opposite, and like versus, basically. Uve is the equivalent of versus, and then the e ending is me. We talked in the second session last time. I went into quite a bit of detail about how exactly you get the various endings from a sort of common, like systematic morphology, right? So we'll see more of these as we go through this, but Coptic prepositions are sort of weird because there's like 3 different first person endings, and you kind of just you just learn it over time, and you don't think about it too much. But when you're first learning, it's really confusing because it's like, why are there 3 totally different endings? And I have to just like arbitrarily learn which ending goes with which preposition. Well, one, you don't, because we're not actually producing anything in Coptic yet. That's pretty far down the line in terms of what we'll do in this class. So you don't actually have to be able to choose the right one for each preposition. You just have to know when you see it, which is quite a bit easier as like a cognitive task. But then 2, there actually is an underlying logic, but you have to kind of internalize these historic sound changes that led to Coptic. And the really key one that you need is final vowels tend to get dropped if they are against some sort of like hard consonant. So like a really non-sonorant or plosive consonant will cause the loss of the vowel that follows it. And this, you have analogy with something like French, where there are so many French words that have an E on the end, and you don't actually pronounce that E unless you're like singing like Edith Piaf. You just get the kind of final T sound. So that's where you get the T ending in a lot of these. There was an E vowel after it, and the E vowel is just sort of being swallowed, and you just get the final T. In other cases, the E vowel is just preserved because there was some sort of environment that preserved it, as in these cases where you have a diphthong that will preserve that sort of semi-vowel I-Y sound of the first person common singular ending, and it will make it into the like the secondary component of a diphthong, or maybe it'll just be the sound E, like the vowel sound. Just depends on the situation. But once you get those kind of rules mentally memorized, these things will kind of, you'll see how they're really just different views on the same thing. And I talked a little bit about that now, probably too much without having examples to show you, but I'll bring it up again and show it to you again, and it will eventually start to make sense. Okay, so for the next 4, I have Claudio.
Yes, yeah. 5, the number 5.
Yes,
At Beten, because of us.
Yeah.
Number 6.
Why is that one? Why did I pause? I paused on that one for a second. Why do you think I paused? What's confusing about this one?
Could you say again, sorry?
What is confusing about number 5? Why is it confusing? You got it right, but there's a wrong answer that is very tempting here.
I got it wrong.
Okay, good. Yeah, somebody who got it wrong. What did you say?
About you plural.
Yeah, good. Okay, I'm so glad you didn't say something totally random, like like the walrus is purple or something. Yes, about you plural is a very tempting wrong answer because it ends in 10. But what would about you plural be typically in Saidic? Does anyone know?
I'm guessing it would be etvet toten.
Yes, etveteuten is how we would say about y'all. But this, at a glance, out of context, very much looks like it says about y'all with the 10. But the T is actually part of the preposition, and the N is the only part of the pronoun. So that's the first common plural pronoun ending is the N. Interestingly, this T, does anyone know where that T comes from? You're gonna get like 100 fake bonus points on your exam if anyone tells me correctly where that T comes from. I want to be just blown away. I'll go ahead and write it. If I write it in, oops, wrong keyboard. If I write it in Egyptian, I don't know how exactly it's spelled, but I can just do like something like this. And then it's that T. Does anyone know what this T is in a construction like this? Erjebat. It is the infinitive ending for quartier and firme verbs. So verbs of the 4th week class, I think it's jebai. And then in the infinitive, the final E changes into a consonantal T. Or it might be the case that jeba is a just a triliteral, and the T is kind of a back formation, or it's just like regularization of the infinitive. But this T is the verb infinitive. So this is literally in order to exchange, or jeba means to exchange. But then it's typical of Middle Egyptian. It's used in very specific circumstances where you have final weak verbs, and then it gets generalized to be stuck onto all verbs, but it becomes the marker of the infinitive. So that T that's in this Coptic word is actually the verbal infinitive ending from late Egyptian and before. So kind of interesting. And then it creates this coincidental situation where it looks like the second person plural pronoun. So yeah, if you made that mistake, easily forgiven because it totally looks like that. Okay, sorry, Claudio, to derail you with all of that, but maybe some good stuff in there. I'm gonna try number 6.
Yeah, number 8, near us. 7, I'm not sure. Echrai John. Upon us, upon
Yes.
us.
Upon us is the perfect translation. It's literally up on us.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
Echrai means up.
Sorry?
Echrai means up or down, but in this case, up.
And 8, ube teuten. Ube teuten. That is regarding you all.
Yeah. Yeah, or against you all, opposite you all, any of those things would be fine. Okay, good job, Claudio. Tyler, do you want to take 4 of these?
How y'all doing? Number 9, metten, with y'all.
Yeah, good.
Number 10, epesit echoy, down on me.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Literally down on me.
Okay.
Like if a meteor, heaven forbid, were to strike you and you were describing the situation, you would say,
yeah,
down upon me. Epesate literally means to the dirt. Esate is like dirt or ground. So yeah, epesate joy, downwards onto me.
All these prepositions, so much fun. Number 11, nachrai, so before me, as in my presence.
Yeah.
Number 12, et veetk, por, like because of him, because of you, masculine.
Yeah.
Like por, I don't know, that's because of, or
Yeah. It can't really mean for the sake of the way por can, but
yeah, like por Dios, not like that.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's hard to translate these into any other language because prepositions, as I've said before, prepositions tend to kind of divide up this abstract space of all possible directions and movements, and they do it in totally arbitrary ways. So, you know, a French preposition might grab these 5 ideas and encircle them with one preposition, where in English, those will be both grabbed by 2 totally different prepositions. So it's really rare that you can just directly translate.
I think I use 6 to 7 languages prepositions in my, that's why my notes are a mess and I say things because it's in Latin or English or Spanish or whatever.
Yeah, and that's
Just
a good way to do it, because if you have an intuition in that other language, it can be really helpful for very quickly gaining an intuition about Coptic without having to see a bunch of usages. The ultimate way to really learn them is just to do a bunch of reading and just see them used in context, and then you'll kind of mentally construct the boundary of that particular, you know, idea space, as it were. But yeah, that's great. Porti, I guess at Baytech, yeah, that's how you would translate it. Okay, good job, Tyler. I think next on my list is Heather. And Heather, you're going to get a messy one. I know you said you expressed concern. Prepositional clouds analogous to your vowel clouds. Yes, very analogous, entirely analogous. It's a weird case where we might think of prepositions and that abstract space I'm describing as being discrete, where you can either go towards something or away from it, but actually it isn't. It's actually pretty much continuous in the way people use it. And so yeah, you can think of those as little like, you could think of them as like a Gaussian process where you're going to have like the shape is going to be like a weird shape depending on what language you're in, but they're all going to be kind of behave with that like that bell curve behavior where almost everything is right here and then drops off very quickly and then kind of disappears toward infinity.
Where I live, up and down the river is always the direction of the same direction, but up and down the street could be anywhere. So
yeah, you say like up the river.
Up the river means from where the river comes, but up the street could mean this. You could say it differently going to and from.
Yeah, we do that with if we say like I'm going to drive up. Like if I was going to drive up to Dallas, I would say drive up to Dallas if I was talking to anyone. My mom, when we were moving from Providence to New York a little over a year ago, would always say like, "Oh, so you're going to drive up to New York this weekend?" And I would always be confused for a moment because it's like, where does she think I live? Like I'm not in DC, so I'm gonna drive down. But yeah, it's just kind of.
I got the same with my dad used to go up to London every morning, yet London was south of us because it's the major city. So you drive, you go up to it's a importance level rather than a directional level.
Yeah, it's kind of like you imagine it as being like a city on a hill type of thing. And so you conceive of it as being upward. You'll see when we start reading things from the New Testament, Jerusalem is up, and they will constantly say up to Jerusalem. But there are plenty of other cases where it's like less obvious than that, where they're going like from the Transjordan to the Galilee, and they're like, he went up to the Galilee. It's like, oh yeah, but it will say ehrai, right? Which can mean up or down. So you have to actually know like which of these is, you know, geographically or whatever, topographically higher than the other to interpret it. So yeah, all good stuff. Prepositions are awesome. They're really fun. They're messy, which is great because language is messy. but they are also comprehensible, which is one of these really tough things that we're kind of still dealing with in Egyptology, where there were a lot of attempts in the past to treat language as though it were sort of mathematical, like you could just combine things in very specific ways and they would have very specific meanings. It's only fairly recently that this understanding of language as a messy probabilistic thing has sort of crept in, and I still have this problem all the time. Like if I talk about my Coptic vowel research to Egyptologists, I guarantee you there will be some old grumpy shithead, to be quite blunt, who is like, you can't use math with language. Language is not math. And it's like, one, go away. Two, you have no idea what you're talking about because you're thinking of this thing in the past where people would try to use context-free grammars and stuff to analyze Egyptian language, and it didn't work because it's messier than that. I'm talking about something totally different. Try to keep up, but also just go away. So yeah, that's my little rant about that. Please don't come up to me and say you can't use math to study language. You are very, very wrong. So anyway, okay, Heather. Heather is next. I'll stop ranting and get back to the exercises at hand.
No, that's okay. It gave me a second to actually like clear my head a bit.
Cool.
I'm still pretty brain foggy. I did not have COVID, but it felt a lot like it.
Did you have some kind of illness, or are you just working
Yeah,
yourself
it felt
too
like
hard?
I had the worst flu of all time.
Oh gosh, and you
Yeah.
got tested and it wasn't COVID.
I got tested twice.
Wow.
But I had a fever for 5 days and I was out of work for 2.5 weeks.
Okay, well, so we will be patient.
Okay.
If it makes you feel any better.
I think I did finish the end of B, but I might have to work through C. So 13 nache, before you.
Yeah, and this you that you're speaking to?
Singular.
What? Singular, and what else?
And then is feminine, I think.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
14 heok, on you, masculine.
That's right.
And then 15 neman. Oh, I wrote down with us, but it's with you. Is it an N?
I don't want to reveal the answer. I want to make you choose.
No, it is us.
Yeah, it's us.
Okay.
With us.
Oh, because it doesn't have the line. Okay.
And it doesn't have a T. With
okay.
you. So we had this example earlier of I think it was et beten, where it's confusing because it has the T, but the second plural will always have a 10 in it somewhere. It might have teuten or nemeten, both of those have 10. You'll always have a T. So if you don't have a T, you're actually on the safe side where it's like it's definitely first person plural.
Okay.
If you do have a T, then that's where it gets tricky because you have to determine whether that T is part of the pronominal ending or part of the prepositional base. And it really could go either way. A lot of prepositional bases end in T's because T is such a common morphological ending. It's the ending of feminine nouns and it's the ending of the infinitive. So you get it a lot. So you get that kind of, that area of uncertainty. Okay, that's probably enough about that. These, if you haven't done them yet and you want to work through them, I think you'll be okay because once I give you the vocabulary, everything should kind of click together. They're complete sentences.
Okay, I think I can work my way through one at least. So let's see, mu, apmu, that's Jeff as the nominal subject, and then shope is the verb to come. So death came.
It's like to become, to come into being. It actually is one of these things that doesn't translate very well into English. You have to understand it as meaning to not exist and then to exist.
Okay. like an apparition, apparition.
Apparition, yes, like an apparition. Apparitions often often chope. They more often wone evol, which is to become visible. But they can chope. They chope at the beginning, right? When the Agatha daemon first creates the aeons or whatever. Yeah. So we'll get into some Gnosticism eventually, I promise.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So death appeared or happened. Hem in cosmos, the world, evil hiten. That'd be like through.
Yeah, good.
Okay. And then
yeah, you got it right. I was going to tell you to leave that aside momentarily because it's one of these confusing ones that only mean something in context, but you already have it correct. It means through.
Yeah, I had to kind of put them together a bit. And then nen nove is our sins.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Okay, that's it. Afmu shope hem cosmos evolhiten nen nove. The death came about in the cosmos through our sins.
Okay.
Very good. All right, I think you can do another. I believe in you, Heather.
I will try. I'm like looking at the vocabulary. Let's see. Do you still pronounce the first one? Is that mensa, even though there's a double N, or is that?
I'd say menensa, actually.
Menensa. Okay.
I'd say both of them if it's me, but I don't know.
So that one is after, chronologically after, nigh, plural, after these.
Yep.
So I'm not sure how to translate the, is it ja in this context? Because
yeah,
that
just
like
leave the debt aside for now.
Okay, so afmu,
Afmu is the same verb.
Yeah, so it's death.
But it's a verb this time.
Right. I'm just trying to remember the he or
yes.
it. So then is it died because it's the verb?
Yes, he died.
Okay.
And then who died?
The next one, I have no.
Don't worry about this enchi so much. It just marks the subject of the verb. It doesn't translate.
Okay. And then pero, king, et emau,
so et emau, can someone give me the literal translation of that real quick? Or, provide it for Heather. Et emau, what would that mean?
That there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's
the king which is there.
That king.
Yeah, exactly. So literally, enki or enchi you can't really do a lot with, but pero et emau is that king. So afmu enchi that king.
That king died.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
So that enchi just gives you it just marks the subject. Coptic really likes to do this thing where it conjugates the verb
right,
and then gives you the subject later.
Okay.
That's probably a historical holdover from the SVO word order of earlier Egyptian, which has been sort of lost in Coptic because we have all of these periphrastic constructions where you have this literally says he did die, but of course the subject is here. Now it's embedded in the middle of this longer phrase, he did die. So then when they want the real
who the he was. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So then the first part would be so after these I don't know, things or events or something that's not defined here?
Yep.
Okay.
After whatever came before, de generally introduces a new subject from the one that has been used for the previous sentence and clauses.
Okay.
We often translate it something like but, although that's not really exactly right. I always think of it as, I think of it sort of in the way of like Monty Python's and now for something completely different. That's a good way to think of it. It's just kind of like, it's like menen sanai de, and then the de tells you like, oh, now we're talking about something else. And that's really all it tells you. And it goes after the thing, right? It's a post-positive, which means it comes as close to the beginning of sentence as possible after the first primary stress. So menen sanai has one stress, then you get de.
Okay.
That's really confusing, but it gets easy with practice. Okay, so very good, Heather. Applaud your efforts and the struggling through. It's a great way to do it. I hope we all learned some interesting things. And I have Pat next. Pat, do you want to do 4 of these?
Yeah, sure. So apshere he episet ejem pka, the child fell down onto the ground.
Good.
Then etve u anehise shope emoi. Why did these labors happen to me?
Yeah, hise can also mean toils, afflictions, suffering. Yeah. It's kind of nice. I love that in Egyptian, the word for work and suffering is the same word.
They have the right idea.
Yeah, they have the right attitude. I don't think that would work in American English because you're supposed to pretend to like working. One of the most fucked up parts of my culture I can think of. Not the most, but one of the most. The idea that you're supposed to pretend to like working all the time is just absurd. Yeah. So why did these works and or afflictions happen to me? Very good.
So Fen Kotek ejem pechloch afrime. He lied down on the bed and wept.
Yes, very good. He lay down on the bed and he wept. And this is one of those cases of what we call a senditon. Yeah. The conjunction is missing. And
then aenrome hon ehun e ptime et hijem pto etemau. The men approached the town which was on that mountain.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so well done, Pat. Let's see, I have GT next. It looks like I'm kind of running low on people, so we might have to go around again. Or maybe you can have more.
Sure. So 7 mensos de auge e peshire hin to synagogue. Afterwards, they found their son in the synagogue.
Yeah, so can you do it a little more literally for me? So menensos literally means
after that, afterwards. Yeah,
it's literally after it, but afterwards is a good translation. And then auge e peushere, what does that mean?
Auge, they fell upon.
Yeah.
Their son in the synagogue.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's a nice translation in English is the phrase "come upon" because that's how we use to like sort of find something by chance while going about your business. Although that's not what happened in this story. That's kind of what the phrase means. So they happened upon their son in the synagogue. Obviously, this is the story where like Jesus runs away. Yeah.
Okay, then 8. Aumu nki anome in Tepolis ha ukoko. The men in this city died from hunger.
Yeah, literally.
They, that is the men in the city, died of hunger.
Under a hunger. Yeah, good. Yeah, they died, namely the men of this city. This N has to be the word of, by the way, and we know that because if it were the men in the city, you would need et. You can't just make a relative clause like that in Coptic by just sticking the things together. But you can make a genitive phrase that way. So the men of the city, the men of this city is the only correct reading.
Okay.
Good.
Then 9. Usha shope paima pehu ho etamau. That festivals happen here on that day.
Did you say festivals?
Yes.
Not quite.
Sure.
Usha.
I was thinking that it was Shah festival and then U making it an indefinite plural.
Well, indefinite plural would be hensha.
Is that a festival happens here?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's it. Yeah, singular. Good.
gotcha. And then 10. Anhise hitum pehko au antoun anvok e katima. We grew weary from hunger, and we arose and ran into the other town.
Yeah, good. Anvok ketime is probably just we went to another town, but we ran is fine too. Okay, good job. Well done, GT. Joe, do you want to take 4?
Sure thing. Hi, everybody. Number 11. Afshaja naman etve njoome et ntapolis. He spoke with us about the scrolls or books which are in the city.
Yeah, good. No complaints.
Great. Number 12. Aihise ayin kadik aishleel epenute etve ne shaje. I grew weary. I lay down and I prayed to God about these things.
Yeah, literally these words or these speeches or something, but yeah, these matters. Good.
Number 13. Afhon ehun nchi peho mpasha. The day of the feast drew near or approached.
Yeah, good. Can you do that a little more literally? Afhon ehun.
Let me see. I wrote this down about a week ago, so I've got to drag it out here.
That's okay.
The day of the feast. Well, I drew near.
Yeah. So okay. So this is the day of the feast. What if we translate?
Yeah.
What if we saw just this?
Oh, it drew near or it approached.
It approached. Literally, it drew near in, and then enchi paholim shah. And then that, as you said, is the day of the feast. That's something that I'll do quite often, especially when we get into more difficult things. It's very easy as a language student. I'm not saying this to you, Joe. I'm saying this generally, not based on any of your answers so far, but it's very easy as a language student to get kind of overwhelmed by the number of problems you have to solve in order to translate a sentence. And it's real, right? There's quite a few things. If I handed this text to a random person on the street, they would say, I have no idea what that says. If they had gone through chapter 3, maybe of Lambden, they would know what half of the words say, and they would have a lot of problems to solve. If you can completely translate this sentence, you just solved, 10 to 20 problems, in a lightning quick time frame. But a lot of times it can be helpful to actually slow down and take each word or each, subdividable unit as its own thing. I find that helps most when you have things that have to be translated depending on context. So people will kind of depend on the context and they'll actually forget what the individual words are. So if you slow it down and take them apart, you have to really pay attention to what the words mean, and that can help with the whole thing. Okay, so for example, in this one, in 14, Joe, what do you have?
Apaholo muhidum perotin tefri. This would be the old man died at the entrance of his cell.
Good. Yeah, hidden pro in tefri. So it's, you know, again, this preposition that's kind of like in front of, at the entrance of, the door of his cell. Yeah, not sure how we would break that down any further. And you've already got it right, so not necessarily a need to, but yeah, I think we got everything there. So I have gone through the roster. If I didn't call on you and you would like to be called on, please say so now. If I didn't call on you and you would prefer not to be called on, it's because you told me that and I somehow managed to remember in spite of myself. Okay, and so I'm just going to go back to the beginning, and maybe a couple people get like some bonus questions. Michael, do you want to say these two, 15 to 16?
Sure. Oko awo awe epaho eptime.
Good.
They hungered. They went hungry, and they came back to the city.
Yeah, good. Translation is totally correct. That struggle that you're having at the beginning with alcohol is because so there is this ambiguity in Coptic with this verb form. It can be either preterite or perfect. So it can be, and then a lot of Coptic verbs can be, what's the word? Like atelic or sort of inchoative, where it's not necessarily that the thing happened in a moment, but the thing is beginning to happen, or it's gradually happening. This is where for instance, if you study Latin verbs, this is where you get that SC infix in words like cognoscere or whatever. You get that SC because it's a gradual process rather than an instantaneous process. Coptic really doesn't distinguish that very often. And then you have this ambiguity here where it can be they have become hungry, meaning they are hungry, or they were hungry, and they became hungry. And I think in this case, it needs to be they became hungry, but you can't tell just from that word alone.
Yeah, I mean, they returned to the city there because.
Exactly.
Yeah. Menunsos de atenpolis he evol hitotef. Afterwards, our city fell away because of him.
Good.
Because of it.
Yeah. Kind of upon his hand,
he
literally.
Paused it to. And it feels like there's more context for that one needed.
Well, I can tell you that to fall out. If you've ever seen The Wire, fallout in Coptic means the same thing that it means in The Wire. That's a dark comparison, but it's true. It's to die. It's a euphemism for die, perish. Yeah. If you haven't seen The Wire, that's your homework. I mean, it's like the best show ever. So yeah, so after this or afterwards, our city perished by his hand. Kind of the best you can do with that. Okay, and we have two more. I think Claudio, it's come around to you again.
I prefer to skip, sorry.
Okay, in that case, Tyler, would you like to read these two?
Why not? Number 17. Aftaun nchi peshere evolhi pakach afpot sha pefeut.
Pefiot.
Pefiot. So he got up subject marker, the sun, from the ground.
Yeah.
And he ran to his father.
Good. Yep.
Or went to
Very
his
good.
father, but I like ran.
It's ran. Pot
Okay.
is ran.
Okay.
Vok is the generic word that means go.
Okay.
Moche is the word, the generic word that is often used for go, but specifically means walk. Pot is the word that specifically means to run. Yeah,
Okay.
to move quickly.
Number 18. Mununsa ne shache a penchois and Coptic, which after these things our Dominus died.
Yeah, could be died. In Coptic, literally just means lie down, and can mean sleep. But it could be a euphemism for die too, especially because you have the our Lord. This is a context where people would use the lie down euphemism for die, because obviously it's someone who's dear to them. Yeah, good. Okay, and last but not least, and sorry if you're the last person to get bonus questions, Heather, let's come around to you.
Can I pass on that one?
You can always pass.
Okay, I think my brain is devolved back into fogland.
Okay, we're in the fog. It's always tragic when that happens. I feel like I spend most of my life in that fog, honestly.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
GT, do you want to take these last two?
Sure. So 19. Ashope de ashe nu ha pikluk. It happened that she found gold under the bed.
Yeah, very good. Good translation.
Yeah.
Do you want to try to do it more literally?
Yeah, this was the one I had the most problems with. Because so the ashope, so she happened.
Yeah, and it's like it happened, as you correctly said, but literally she happened, where the she is some unknown event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, but she happened, she found,
she fell to, literally.
Gold. Yes, she fell upon gold under the bed.
Yeah, good.
And then 20, Anache hun ehun etemro. The boats drew near to the harbor.
Very good. Yeah, all right. Okay, so that's all of the exercises for now. Like I said before, we split those up just because I think there was a time factor last week where I couldn't promise to be here any later than the hour on the dot, and also because there's so much in this lesson. I really feel like this is one of the fullest lessons in this whole book. So the first thing that we have is the direct object, which you really haven't seen before. So the direct object of a transitive verb is usually introduced with the preposition n, which is it can also be m before a certain consonant, and imma before pronouns. This is basically the same as the preposition that means of, and this is going to get confusing after a while. It gets really confusing when you have some kind of clumsily written text, because you'll just have like ends before every single word, including sometimes the plural article. They will duplicate it. They'll say NN for the plural article, so it will look like of the things, but it will really just be the things. It's messy.
I love how Lambdin actually draws it out on that last sentence on the page. You can see at the moment. It is unfortunate that.
Oh, does he say it on here?
Yep, just right at the bottom now. The very last.
Oh, sorry, your faces are in the way. Let me move you. Oh yeah, it is unfortunate that the prenominal forms of the most frequent direct and indirect object markers are the same, NM before P and M. So that's where M changes, of course. It's basically just the word N. In general, the direct object precedes the indirect object. So this is where it gets kind of complicated. there is a complex series of rules for how word order works. The basic gist of it is that if you have pronouns, they tend to move closer to the verb. And then there's a certain hierarchy, like direct object tends to be closer to the verb than indirect object. In general, the direct object precedes the indirect object unless the direct object is nominal and the indirect object is pronominal. So he's giving you this case where things will go in reverse because of the sequence of priorities, right? If the indirect object is pronominal, it will get moved closer to the verb. And then because the direct object is nominal, it won't get moved closer to the verb. So it just gets left in place and you get this reverse order. I wouldn't fret too much about that. That's probably quite confusing right now. But again, you're not constructing Coptic sentences yet, you're just translating them. So you'll see a lot of well-formed examples and you won't have to worry about it just yet. But the basic gist of it is that we use this of preposition to join direct objects to verbs. It's sad when you study a language and then you find out that they made it wrong. It is truly tragic. One of the many tragedies of Coptic is that verbs are all infinitives. So this literally says, it says he built a house, af kot inue, but it literally says, af he did, kot, building, inue, of a house. So he did the building of a house. So you need a preposition actually, because the verb is actually a noun. It's a total mess. And then he built it, af kot emoth, literally off he did, kot, building, emoth, of it. He did the building of it. So yeah, that's just how Coptic works. There are some cases where the preposition used is instead of n, and you'll get used to these. They're mostly, as Lambden says, mostly verbs denoting perception, and really even within that, it's a specific set of verbs that take with the direct object. So ansotim epethrou, that's not the example I would chosen, but we heard his voice, literally we listened to his voice. And then ansotim erof, we heard it, literally we listened to it. There are other examples that are less obvious than that. For instance, we could say on now epfa, we saw his house. Literally, we did looking toward his house on now So like the verb now takes for the direct object. There's a bunch of those. You'll see them. And then a bunch of other prepositions that get used with verbs. You don't really have to worry about these too much because you just kind of get used to them. They work in the same vein as the compound verbs do. Like he'evol means literally to fall out, but it means to die. Shine and sa means literally ask after, just like in English, it is to like seek someone. So afshine and sa tafsime, he asked after his wife, or he sought his wife, he looked for his wife. Afshine and sos, he asked after her, or he looked for her. And now the indirect object. This is a new preposition and pronoun combination that wasn't in the previous chapter. So just like we have men becomes nemaf or whatever, we have n, which is a different preposition from the n that means of. It's a different word. And then when it combines with a pronoun, it becomes na. So we have this whole series, nai, ne, nak, naf, nas, nan, notin? What is it in Saidic? I don't know. Natin probably in Saidic. And then now. So that's a whole new series that you get here. A series of prepositions that, again, you don't have to memorize in toto. You just see them a bunch of times. So ID impjome improme, I gave the book, literally I did the giving of the book to the man. And then this is the N that we've just learned, but then it becomes M before the P in prome, like always. ID naf impjome, I gave to him the book, or I did giving to him of the book. And then ID mofnaf, I did the giving of it to him. So I gave it to him. And you can see what Lambden is talking about with this kind of word order switch, where generally the dative phrase comes at the end, but if it's pronominal, it gets moved closer to the verb. if the direct object is not pronominal, it doesn't get moved. So you get this single case here where you have reverse order. And then when they're both pronominal, you again get the normal order of verb, direct object, indirect object. Don't fret about that too much if it's confusing. And then we get yet another thing in this chapter that is already overstuffed. We get a different verb form. And this is how Lambden's going to do it for the rest of the time. He's given you a verb paradigm with the preterite. So you have a good case where we can make sentences and verbs and you can read them correctly and we can practice the idea of verbs all day long. Well, now that he's given you the idea of verbs, he's going to pepper in all of the new verb conjugations. And this is probably the nearest one to the one you've already learned. So you learned the affirmative version of the first perfect, or what I'm calling the preterite. So I voc would be I did go. The negative counterpart of that is empivoc, I did not go. And this is just for historical reasons. The negative is not directly morphologically derived from the affirmative. They're really, it's defective, right? There are really two different constructions that are used in contrast to one another so that we get this radical change. It's the same thing that we have in English with I go versus I went. Those are really two different verbs that kind of took over different parts of the territory. And so we get this irregularity. Same thing with I am versus I was. There are really two, I think in this case, I actually know a little bit more. It's like bein and werin are the two Anglo-Saxon verbs, and they took over complementary parts of the verb tenses and sort of became variants of one another, but they're really just two totally different things. Same thing with I voc, which is I did go, and empivoc, which is not the I did going or something like that etymologically. But then you have this whole paradigm, empivoc, impecvoc, impetvoc, again, the second person feminine is just a glottal stop, impethvoc, impesvoc, impenvoc, impetenvoc, and impuvoc. All of those meanings are relatively predictable based on the pronouns that are embedded in that construction. And then before a noun, you get impepromevoc, the man did not go. Something about compound prepositions here, which we've already seen, so I'm not going to talk much about it. And then that's basically it for this lesson. So again, in this particular lesson, because it's just a little overstuffed, you get really three totally new things. You get the direct object, again, constructed with the genitive preposition. You get the indirect object constructed with this new preposition, which also happens to be n, but it's different in the pre-pronominal form. And then lastly, you get this new verb form, which is just the negative counterpart of the perfect that you already learned. But it's defective, so it's a totally different construction. I find that this one clicks pretty quickly for students, honestly, even though it looks weird. Like empivoc, it just sounds like it means I didn't go for some reason. It's just kind of iconic or just kind of intuitive in some way. And then you'll get a bunch of practice with these, where you'll get a bunch of MP, empus, imped constructions, and you'll get a bunch of perfect constructions intermixed with one another, so you'll get to practice. And that's about it. So are there any questions from this lesson? Okay, so we're going to practice. I think it's going to click pretty quickly for you. But again, it is a lot of stuff, so we'll struggle through next time. And I think that's about it for today. MP book sounds like a Swedish laptop. Yes. No objection from me. The MP, trying to think of what it sounds like to me. Now it just sounds like Coptic, honestly. But yeah, if it's at all hopeful, again, I find that one clicks really quickly. Something about the imp just feels like just feels negative. It feels like it's negating something. And this is the only construction that has emp in it. Well, it's not totally true. This is the only verb that has emp in it. That's also not true. Damn it.
Was there not a construction at somewhere in lessons 3 or 4 where we start a negative with an
Yes.
Even though it's not an ump.
It's not an ump, and it's not an ump that it's specifically meaningful that it's not an ump. It's derived from something different.
And that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's where we normally get the on also. So remember when we saw negations before, we would have something like empayot anpe, like he is not my father. And you'll get the on, you'll get the n at the beginning kind of optionally, and then you'll get the on afterwards. So you could say like payot anpe, he is not my father. You don't actually need the m at the beginning or the n. This MP, notice there is no on here. It's not MP voc on, although that does kind of make sense to me intuitively, but you don't really ever see it. So they really are separate constructions, but the M at the beginning of MP does come from the same word as the initial M in impayot anpe. Those are ultimately derived from the same word. Very old word ni that is quite negative, as the word ni tends to be. Okay, so I think that was a good question. I don't actually remember where the question was in there, but we talked about something interesting, so that worked out. Does anyone have any questions before we go? Okay, well, in that case, I will see you all very soon, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye, everyone.